Great. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it. Um, so without further ado, we'll jump into our talk tonight. In just 3 years, the Washington Bee Atlas has experienced tremendous growth and is already expanding our knowledge in the state's bee fauna. Hear from program staff Caleb Lankford, who is the volunteer coordinator, and Karen Wright, pollinator taxonomist, about the program's progress and exciting new discoveries. Without further ado, take it away.
Hi, everybody. My name is Caleb. I'm the volunteer coordinator for the Washington Bee Atlas. Um, and I'm going to share my screen while Karen gets us started by saying a little bit about what the Bee Atlas is.
Okay, yeah, so a lot of you know who we are, and I did give a talk here, gosh, almost 2 years ago now. So we are a volunteer organization. Caleb and I are the only two Washington Department of Agriculture employees that run the program. But we're a volunteer organization, sort of similar to Master Gardeners, but instead we have a master melitology. And melitology is the fancy word for native bee scientist. An apiologist is a person who studies only honeybees, and a melitologist is the person who studies all the other 39,999 bees on the planet. So we are the Washington Bee Atlas, and our goal with our through our volunteers is to map all the bees in the entire state. We know we have more than 600 species, but we don't know where each one lives, what it pollinates, what kind of substrate it nests in, all that information. So we're working on trying to collect all that data through our volunteer program. So, just a little bit about myself. I've been working on native bees for 26 years now. I started working on bees when I lived in New Mexico, and I worked down there for many years in New Mexico and then in Texas. And I've only been in Washington for a little over 3 years. So it is a new area for me, which is great because it's a lot of new fun stuff for me to learn, but it's also a new challenge. So we're working on now identifying. So the Bee Atlas started in 2023. And so we've been collecting bees for 3 years now, and we finally have a lot of that data to present. So last time I spoke to you, it was just me trying to run the program, and but now I have Caleb, and I'll let him introduce himself.
So, unlike Karen, I am relatively new to the bee scene. I have a background in life sciences, but actually taught high school science for 5 years down in Mississippi. I'm really passionate about the interface of science and the public. And so what y'all's group does is near and dear to my heart. Um, After I finished teaching, I decided I wanted to go back to school and was working on my master's. And I couldn't teach at the same time while I was getting my degree. So I needed a job. And through a series of crazy circumstances, I ended up working at a USDA facility in Stoneville, Mississippi, in their pollinator health lab. And that is where I cut my teeth with learning all things native bees. And I worked in that job for just a little bit over a year. And through that position, heard that something called the Washington Bee Atlas was hiring, looking for someone to help out and run the program. So I have been in Washington just since January of last year, a year and some change at this point. And like Karen, I've loved it. It's super fun. And I'm really enjoying getting to travel around and collect bees and learn a whole new set of bees out here in the PNW. So I'm going to start us off tonight just talking a little bit about all the exciting stuff that happened in 2025 for the Bee Atlas. We'll go through some numbers and share some fun statistics. And then Karen will wrap us up and talk about some exciting bee discoveries that the program made. So taking a look at some numbers here. So when I last gave this presentation in March, we had 150 active volunteers. That number has dramatically increased within the past couple of months. Last time I checked, I think we're up to 174. So these numbers are already out of date. We can't go in and edit all the time. So just looking at some of our program growth here, we started off with just 27 dedicated volunteers. And in 2024 and 2025, we added over 50 in each of those years, which is really exciting. And that number in 2026 is continuing to grow. What's really fun is that we have some folks who live in Oregon who are part of the Oregon Bee Atlas, which is our older sister, if you will, who also have signed on to be Washington Bee Atlas volunteers. So I call them our super duper double dippers. Bees, of course, don't see state lines. And so folks that live close to the state border can help survey in both states, which is great. And just to put some perspective here on our little solar system of volunteer numbers, we've had a huge amount of people apply to the program, and I get more applications every single day. So the growth is definitely not finished by any means. We're in over 39 counties, or we have volunteers in 39 counties. We started off in just 13 in our first year. And in our second year of 2024, we were in 26 counties. And as of the end of 2025, we're in 29 counties of the 39 in the state, which is really awesome. We are hoping to target some of our emptier counties over on the east side. The beauty of the program is that our volunteers can collect bees where they live. And so we rely on having volunteers in certain strategic areas to help survey the bees that are there. And there's our super duper double dippers ready to storm the border to our south. And just by the way, if anybody's interested in signing up to be a volunteer, you can head to our website. There's an application there. You can learn all sorts about what our program does and some of the bees that our state has. But you know, it's a rolling application, so we're always taking new folks, and we love onboarding new volunteers. So over 4,000 volunteer hours were accumulated in 2025, which is amazing. That's a lot of dedicated time. And that is almost doubled what we have done in a previous year. So a lot of man hours went into all the exciting stuff that we documented this year. And what I really like is that when you look at how those hours are distributed over the year, we're getting some more action in early and late season timeframes. So that helps capture really important bee phenology. We want to know what are our really early season bees, what's first emerging on the landscape, and what's our last late fall bees. So we're spreading the love out throughout the year. There's 365 bee love. And in 2025, we had 75 events. 10 of those were microscope trainings hosted at various locations around the state. We had 51 field events where volunteers could gather and collect bees together, and a number of outreach events where we helped spread the love of native bees to the public. All of those events were made possible by our event coordinators. We had 12 folks who stepped up to the plate and hosted events in 15 different counties. I want to shout out Peter Abrahamson, who's in the house tonight. Peter started hosting local bee hangs for the Seattle region, which is a place where our volunteers can gather and take a look at their bees in microscopes and learn some tips and tricks for identifying. And not only is it helpful in terms of advancing their knowledge of bees, it's a great source of community for folks who like bees just to get together and chat. And we launched some outreach materials to help support our volunteers as they are doing outreach activities. As a small portion of their master melittologist requirement, our volunteers have to accrue a certain number of service points. And one of the ways they can do that is to attend an outreach event. And we had some really exciting things happen as well this year. We had 3 journey level master melittologists. So when you start out in master melittology, you're an apprentice. You can get your apprentice certification and then graduate up to the journey level. In order to earn your journey level certification, you have to pass a written test in Canvas just to test your general bee knowledge. But then you also have to do an in-person identification exam where you ID 30 bees. A portion of those are bumblebees, which you have to ID to species, and then the remaining are bees that you can ID to genus. So we had our first 3 individuals achieve this prestigious level. The first was Ingrid Carmian in August, and then Lisa Robinson in September, and Carla Salp in November. So we're super proud of our first journey level master melittologists. Round of applause for those folks. And then taking a look at our survey efforts. So in 2025, we recorded over 29,000 occurrence records. Now, an occurrence record is essentially us saying that a bee was at this location. Those occurrence records were generated by 93 volunteers. So 93 people were out there with nets collecting data for the project, which is fantastic. Not all 29,000 of those specimens will end up being bees. There's a portion of those that are bycatch and a portion that was also recorded by grad students who are partnering with the Atlas. So we won't know how many of those 29,000 will actually end up being bee specimens. Our volunteers have turned in their specimens, and Karen and I are going through the process of looking at every single one to identify it at least to genus, so that we can database it and make that information public. A portion of those specimens will be bycatch, things like flies, wasps, and beetles potentially. And then every once in a while, you get an erroneous record. Let's say that a volunteer collected 13 bees, but they accidentally put in that they collected 14 bees. You have what's called a ghost specimen. So who knows what the actual number of specimens will be for 2025. It'll maybe take a year or 2 years to determine that information. But the reason I share that number, that 29,000, is if you compare it to our previous collection efforts, you can see just how much work was done this past year. In 2024, we collected just a little bit over 18,000. And when we first started, we only recorded just under 3,500 occurrence records. So massive growth, and we're going to learn so much from what our volunteers were out there doing in the field this year. It's really exciting. And just like our hours, if you take a look at that collection effort spread over the year, we're collecting at really key strategic times of the year, really early in the season and really late in the season. And what I wish that you could see in this graph are the tiny, tiny bars in January and February and in December. We had at least one specimen collected in every month this year. It is too small compared to our giant June bar. But at least one specimen was collected every month in 2025, which is exciting. And so in terms of our data, right now we've got 51,000 occurrence records in our database, Ecdysis. All of the specimens collected through the Washington Bee Atlas belong to Washington State University. And so this is their databasing platform that they use, Ecdysis. And what is amazing, and Karen deserves all the praise for this, 25,000 specimens have been identified as bees to genus. 16,000 of those have been given a species level ID. So all of this data that we know has been collected since 2023, we're finally getting to make it meaningful and usable by attaching a bee name to it. And that's going to inform conservation work. That's going to inform our assessments of whether these bees are in need of protection or how are they doing out there on the landscape, right? So truly kudos to Karen. I did my best to keep her in the lab all winter long at her microscope. I said, don't look at your emails. Let's keep you identifying bees and getting some names on those specimens. So Not only did our volunteers do a lot this year, but Karen did a lot to improve our data that we've collected. But of course, numbers aren't everything. Something that I like about this program is that it's a group of people, it's a community. And so I wish that I could share with you all the fun and amazing stories of field events and camping trips that we did. We simply don't have the time tonight, but know that the stories behind the numbers are just as interesting and worth celebrating. So it's a blast to be a part of the Washington Bee Atlas, and our volunteers are rock stars. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Karen, and she's going to tell you about some exciting bees that we announced in 2025.
All right. Caleb, did you get this version of the talk from the from our communications folder or from Box?
From our communications folder. You want me to switch to
Yeah,
Box?
right. So I think this is just a little out of date because we changed a
Okay.
little things right at the last moment. But we can still go over it with these because Will Peterman, also very active in the Native Bee Society, is responsible for a few of these new state records that WABA cannot claim. The Bee Atlas cannot claim first rights to because they were found by Will Peterman's work. All right, you want to advance the slide? Okay, so I'm just going to go over a bunch of species. I hope it doesn't get too boring, but these are really exciting things that we found, which are new state records. So this doesn't mean that it's a new species of bee. It just means that it's never been recorded in Washington until the Bee Atlas found them in 2025. Some of these records come from 24 or 2023, but they were identified later by either me or someone else. So this one is super exciting. Carla Saup collected this near Hanford Reach, and she collected it in August, right? I believe it's a fall bee. And at first, I didn't even recognize it as being something different because it looks very much like, superficially, looks very much like one of the most common bees in the state of Washington, which is Andrena prunorum. It was August Jackson who first figured out that this was something different. Now, for one, Andrena prunorum is a spring bee, whereas Andrena volpicolor is a fall bee because it's a specialist on rabbit brush. So it doesn't even come out until later in the year. And you really, superficially, they look a lot alike. You have to see it under the microscope to tell them apart. Yeah, so Carlos says September. I finally turned my chat on. So next record there. We'll have to go through these a little bit quickly because I don't want to go too much over past 8. Caliopsis situla is a new state record found in Grant and Douglas County by Nancy Carlson. This is a summer flyer and it is a specialist, but it's a really neat bee and it's not very common. So if you look at the map down there, WSU had one record of it down south, and then Nancy has found it up pretty much in north central Washington. So it's a really good new state record. Uh, Next is Coelioxys alternatus, the alternate cuckoo bee. And this was collected both by Carla and by Caleb. And it was found in Yakima and Grant County. And this is a cuckoo bee, so it doesn't build its own nest. It robs other bees' nests. And like most bees, cuckoo bees, they tend to rob the nests of bees that are very closely related to them. So Coelioxys in general, their hosts are within the genus Megachile, the leafcutter bees. And this is a nice new state record, even though quite a few people collected it. So I'm assuming that maybe it's not that rare, but just nobody has looked at it before. So next one is another Coelioxys, and this was definitely the year for Coelioxys. So Coelioxys banksii was found by Ingrid and Carla, and they found it in both Benton County and Clallam County. I don't know. And then Coelioxys deni is yet another Coelioxys that is a new state record. And this one, it has a much bigger separation of the points on the map. If you look at that, it has been seen up in Canada, but other than that, it's pretty far south of here. And this is another one that August Jackson determined is new, and because it was found by Ann Bulger on the Ridgefield National Wildlife Refuge. So this is another really interesting new state record. Coelioxys gilensis, I believe this is one of the ones that was actually first found by Will Peterman's study. But then later we found it with the bee atlas in several counties. Diphoria scabricornis, Jan Bushman collected this in Little Pend Oreille National Wildlife Refuge. August identified it, and Jan Bushman is one of our super duper double dippers who lives down in Oregon, but often comes up to Washington to help survey the state. And if you look at the map of this one, it really is a very unusual new record for here. So we'll see if we can find some more of these creatures. Eucera acerba is a very dark Eucera. It's so all Eucera are spring bees. And I love the name, the common name of this one because it's called the painful longhorn bee. So I'm imagining whoever named this species maybe got stung that day that they named it. I don't know, but I think it's a fun name. This was found by Lisa again in Chelan County, and so we're hoping to find some more of this. Lasioglossum obnubilum is one that Joel first identified as a new state record, and then he told me what to look for, and then I found a few other ones. So Peter and Carla both collected this in Kittitas County, and this is called the cloudy sweat bee. Lasioglossum pavoninum is another one that Joel first determined was new. Actually, I think I emailed him and said, hey, Joel, I think I keyed something out to this, but we don't have it listed. And then he confirmed that, yes, this was indeed Lasioglossum pavoninum. And this has been found in Olympic National Park called the peacock sweat bee. Melisodes lustris is one that I'm imagining has, is not quite as rare as we thought it was, but it was probably misidentified as Melisodes, and I do know the name of it, but there's another species that Compositus that's very similar to it, but this ones that we've been finding are definitely lustrous. So either they were just misidentified earlier or they really are rare, but we've only found it so far in Yakima County. So Ed picked up this one, that one. A few perdita have been found, which are new state records. Nate Green from WSU has been working on the perdita of Washington State, so he identified this one as being a new state record that was found by Lisa and Caleb and myself. And this one really likes Eriogonum, but we're not quite sure if it's a specialist. Perdita phalanx is a new state record, which is a fairly common Western perdita, but just not very common west of the Rockies. So it's more of a Midwest kind of thing. But we did find it over at Little Pend Oreille. Lincoln Best from Oregon State collected it. And that's the deceptive fairy bee. So maybe it is more common here. It's just deceiving us. Now that I have my chat open, Will wanted me to give a shout out to Evan Sugden, who is the first author on the paper that they were working on together And so that is for a few of these species that were found first by their publications before the Washington Bee Atlas found any. Perdita nuda is another new state record from Douglas County. Lisa collected this one, so let's try and catch some more of this. It's only on Asteraceae, and it's a late fall bee. Pseudoanthidium nanum, this is an exotic European bee. If you look down at that map, you can see that it is most common in Europe and Eastern Europe, but it has come into both sides of the major ports of North America. So it's been found and spread all over northeastern North America, and now we're finding it in the Pacific Northwest. So Kyle collected this one in Clark County, and I believe it's a generalist. It'll pollinate anything. And Kyle says he found it right in his front yard. So you can get a new state record right from your own yard. Next one is Sphecodes pecosensis. And this one I am pretty sure is not a new state, is not uncommon. Now, Joel Gardner, I have to give him credit. He sent me some notes on some easily recognizable sphecodes. Most of our sphecodes are incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to put species names on at this point. Many of them are simply unnamed, and there aren't any keys to them. But Joel sent me some tips on how to recognize Sphecodes pecosensis, and then we found a bunch of them all over the state. So a bunch of our WABA folks collected it. So I'm going to assume that it's not really an uncommon bee. It's just never been identified before. Stelis carnifex, these are some really cool bees. These are also parasitic bees. And again, because they're kleptoparasites, typically their host is very closely related. So these are parasitic on osmia. This is the executioner cuckoo bee. And it was found by Caleb in two different counties. Oh, wait, had to have been found by somebody else as well. Maybe we missed that. Or maybe you just found them both in two different counties. Anyway, it's a really cool looking bee. So with all that, I'd like to give one shout out to August Jackson. He's based at Oregon State University, but he has gotten a grant to study bees on fish and wildlife, U.S. fish and wildlife, so federal level, not state level, for bees in the Pacific Northwest. So we've been collaborating with him to work on all of the um, fish and wildlife refuges here in Washington. And then we still have a lot of really cool stuff. We have all these rare bees that haven't been seen in a very long time. My husband caught Anthidium formosum, which has not been recorded in the state since 1882. And all of these other bees haven't been recorded for more than 50 years. So we're definitely adding a lot to the data, just knowing which bees occur in Washington and finding out where they live, what they pollinate, who they parasitize. All of this data is really not well known for the state. So this is incredibly important data that all of our volunteers have contributed to. So these are all the folks in the Washington Bee Atlas who have collected either a new state record or a rare bee in the past 3 years. So kudos to them. And I think we can, Caleb, do you want to talk about this just a little bit? We're out of time though. Maybe we should just do some questions and then maybe we should do a talk just on melliflora later in the future, because
I
that's going
agree.
to be a fun tool for the people here to use.
So
It is
Karen,
quite fun, and it's still in the debugging phase.
you have more to talk about. I think everybody's anxious to hear about it.
All right, Caleb, you want to give a quick rundown on melliflora, but like he said, this is
Sure.
still a work in progress.
Let me see. Last time I tried to pull it up, it was quite it was struggling. So I can show the Oregon version of this tool, which operates the same.
In the meantime, if anybody has any questions they want to put into the chat, I'm paying attention now.
Okay, I've got it up, so I'm going to share my screen again. All right, so what you're looking at is a tool that was developed by the folks at OSU who started the Bee Atlas projects at large. The OBA, our older sister, has been going for several years now, and so they have a lot of data and have had time to work on ways to present that data. And so this a solution was, for how can we get this information out? We're collecting data on bees, we're collecting information about the plants that they visit. So how can we create a tool that lets people explore the data that we're gathering? And so the Melitopleura was born. Melitopleura, it's a made-up word. It combines melitology and flora, so a combination of bees and flowers. And what it does is it takes Bee Atlas data and it projects it in a way that you can explore and visualize in this kind of diagram, which is called a network diagram. So you've got bees on the left-hand side and then plants on the right. And these lines are showing what plants the bees visit. And the thickness of the line helps you interpret how much data we have on that specific relationship of bee to plant. What's snazzy about this tool is you can filter with all sorts of filtering tools up here. So if you wanted to look at just the bee and plant interactions in your ecoregion, you could narrow down and let's say, okay, what's going on right now in the Blue Mountain ecoregion? What's active in April? And you can expand these bee lists and say, okay, what's going on with the Andrena in the Blue Mountains in April? What plants are those Andrena visiting at this time of year? And what this will allow us to do eventually is to generate plant lists for bee species. If we know what those bees are going to, we can then think about how can we, if it's a specialist bee, how can we encourage more of that plant in a specific region? How can this inform conservation practices and things like that? And just like you're able to narrow down things on the bee side, you can also narrow by plants. So let's say you have, gosh, this is embarrassing. I'm not very good at my plants. I only have so much room in my head for bees. So let's say you have some mallow in your yard and you want to know, well, what's going to visit that mallow? You can come over here and take a look at all the different bee genera that may visit that mallow and see what bees may be in your garden based on what plants you have. So yeah, essentially a really snazzy visualization tool. And hopefully soon, Washington's tool will be debugged and we'll be able to post it so that folks can start exploring all this amazing data that our volunteers have gathered in a way that helps people make a little bit more sense of it.
This is a really beautiful visualization and just exactly what you said, a very snazzy tool.
Yeah.
It's great.
And shout out to the developing team at OSU. They have been so gracious and helpful in helping get Washington's tool up and running. And I can't even imagine the amount of code that goes into this. So it's really exciting and quite cool.
That's great. Thank you both so much for this really inspiring, kind of triumphant talk about what you all and your volunteers have been able to achieve in the last couple years. Uh, Tens of thousands of observations and you know, got to kind of be proud of my mom a bit more. So that's always something I love.
You should be.
Yeah, I'm very, very much so. So to jump into the comments and questions,
Okay.
again, thank you, Karen and Caleb, so much. You guys did it such a wonderful talk. And please, if you have any questions, share them in the chat and we'll jump right into it from there.
Right. James,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, my mic
Chris.
wasn't working before we went to the main talk. I do have a couple comments, if I could do that before the questions.
Yeah, please
I,
do.
I just wanted to acknowledge that we recently lost a special advocate for Seattle's pollinators, Barbara DeCaro. Barbara was a Seattle Parks and Recreation employee who did most of the heavy lifting to get Seattle into compliance with the Bee City program. She recently passed. She was a very special person. I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge her for her passion, her drive, and her commitment to helping pollinators. She's going to be very missed. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Let me jump into the chat here. So I saw that there was one question from Tarn earlier. Tarn asked, I think they had to unfortunately jump off the chat, but we'll make sure to add on to, or we'll send the answer back to them once we're finished. The Washington Native Plant Society quarterly Douglasina Douglasiana, excuse me, just came out with a plea for help identifying plants associated with Bee Atlas records. Are you going to talk about that effort?
Kyle, you wrote that, didn't you? You want to say something about that?
I did. So Karen and Caleb and I and some others had talked about the fact that there were, you know, the records are great, the bee records are great, but we still need plant identification to go along with the bee records. And so I reached out to the Native Plant Society to see if we could put something in their periodical for that, and they were open to that. And so it's really just I think the numbers we put in that were somewhere around, maybe 40% or more of our bee specimens don't have research grade level plant IDs. And so we need more identification of our plants in order to make the data set better. And so that was really the call out for people who use iNaturalist and for people who are good at IDing plants to go on there and try and help out the data sets more.
Great.
And just a little clarity on that, for folks that don't know how the Bee Atlas works, you can't identify most species of bees to the species level without looking at them through a microscope. But you can identify most species of plants to species through photographs. So when we
Mm,
collect bees, we don't take pictures of the bees themselves because we'd be able to say it's a Coleoxys or it's an Osmia, but we wouldn't be able to say what species it is. So we take pictures of the plants and then we collect the bees off of that plant. And so our bee IDs is all up to Caleb, myself, and our associates at WSU and OSU, and some other helpful people that do all the bee IDs at the microscope. But our plant identifications are solely from the efforts put in through iNaturalist. So we really do appreciate people who go on there and do identifications.
great. And if there's anyone on the board or anyone who doesn't, who feels comfortable reaching out to Tarn, they were able to give me their email information, so we can send that answer to them if anyone is willing. So just throw that in the chat if you don't mind. Um, I had a quick question about just kind of what information or any areas that y'all are need more volunteers, need more information. Something that my mom has pointed out many times to myself and my friends who spend time in the mountains is, the need for more information of higher altitude bees and bee populations like that. Um, Something I've seen before is, the Living Snow Project, where they were collecting snow samples for that red algae that grows on snowfields. So I was just wondering where are the holes in the data? Where do you need more volunteers? How are you reaching out to those kind of those spaces specifically?
So hopefully soon, when that melliflora tool is ready, we'll be able to see the geographic holes in our maps. we already have that raw data that we can visualize a little bit in ecdysis. So we can now get maps of certain species of bees. But we're so young that really we need to sample everywhere because even if you sample one place one time in April, you still don't know what's going on in the bees there for all the other 11 months of the year. So we're still so young, we don't really have the depth of data that Oregon has yet. So we're before we start narrowing down like these areas that we really need to target, first we need our baseline data, and that's what we're working on getting. I assume maybe by the fifth or sixth year, we'll start narrowing down our target to really precise areas. But I do want Caleb to comment on Lisa's question in the chat because he's been doing all of the grading.
Um, the question in the chat from Lisa is, are our volunteers identifying bees to genus? And yes, several volunteers are very skilled at identifying bees to genus. And what's cool about the Melliflora tool is that volunteers can actually go in and look at their own bees. They can type in their name in those filters and get a report back to see, okay, what groups am I doing really well on? What groups do I maybe still need to improve on? And then compare it to the rest of the atlas to see sort of where do they stand in terms of their identifying ability. So we host microscope sessions, and folks can come and learn tips and tricks and how to navigate all the identification keys. And it's at their own choice. You know, some folks do it once and say, "Great, I can check that off," but then others really fall in love with the process of identifying bees and can fall into the rabbit hole of taxonomy. Yeah. And jumping back to your question about holes in the data, JR. Karen's right. Our data is like Swiss cheese right now. We have several holes, and the hope is to fill it in and eventually get, I don't know, provolone or cheddar or something, have a more even look at the state. But there really is, there's a ton of really interesting, cool ways that we can tailor data collection um, uh, to sort of answer any number of questions that we're interested in asking. And something that we're launching right now, honestly, is we've reached out to farm owners and agricultural landowners because we're really interested in what's happening on those like agricultural margins, natural spaces adjoining to ag land. We know that native bees play an important role in agriculture, and so the first step is getting access to farms and semi-agricultural spaces. We can go and survey and figure out what bees are on um, the human spaces as well, alongside the natural spaces.
Great. It seems
Can
like,
I add a little onto that?
yeah, please feel free.
From Caleb's. So the Bee Atlas is doing it, but I've set up that project for the native bees on farms so that it can incorporate photography as well. So we'll have our specimens that we can definitely ID to species, but I know a lot of people in this group are more interested in photography. So if they are taking photos of bees on farms, they can add those photos to the Native Bees on Farms project on iNaturalist and contribute that way as well. Thanks, Caleb.
That's great. And if y'all didn't see it, Caleb just posted a link into the chat to facilitate that. Great. Uh, Lisa just asked, is the Lasioglossium brevonium peacock blue?
Not quite. It's still your more greenish. It does have a little bluish shine to it, but not much. It's still more of a greenish olive color. It does have a rather long head. Oh, and Lisa, your picture earlier with the red abdomen that you said is not um, is
Uh,
probably asperulum.
Yeah, not oblongata. Or no, that's Osvalliceps is the other one. Yeah.
About, yeah. So the other lasioglossum with the red bottom but without a long head is asperulum.
Yeah. Cool.
I have another question for Caleb. Just how are you organizing your volunteers? Where are you searching for more volunteers? How are you reaching out to folks to generate more interest in Washington Native Bee Society and the BLS in general?
Yeah. So the beauty of a community science project is that it's driven by the volunteers themselves. And so Karen and I will pick a couple locations that we want to host events at throughout the year that may be, places that we haven't been before and are interested in getting data from. But then the rest of the organization is up to the volunteers themselves. They choose where they want to go and collect. They will self-organize and host events themselves. So it's this really organic, cool, many bodies, many hands at work, sort of all collectively moving towards this goal. So spaghetti at the wall, I guess, is sort of the organization
Great.
method.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you see the amount of observations that were in Oregon uh, over on Milliflora, is that correct? That you can only imagine how many more will be in Washington once that's up. That sounds really great. If anyone, does anyone else have any last questions? Just
Can
so I'm
I
not.
say something? I'll put my picture on.
Yeah,
Hello.
sure.
Oh, I'm in the
Sure.
dark. Sorry. Hang on. I don't have to be in the dark. Just because I've been in the Bee Atlas, I'm one of the double dippers that goes the other way. I go to Oregon instead. I want to go to Idaho too. The data for the melliflora, we were putting all the flowers in and having the same trouble back in 2020 and 2021, and it kept growing and growing, and there's like thousands and thousands of plants, and we've just blown the plant data out of the water for the all the native plant people, and then they started this group to kind of start identifying things, and then it became melliflora. So it's really amazing to see the growth. And if you go back in the Burke herbarium and look at the maps, it's like the bee maps. There's six of something they have pictures of, and they don't know if it still exists or not because was it plowed over or eaten by a cow or something. So we've made a big difference just by accident. So really
Well,
cool.
I wouldn't say by accident. I would
Accidentally on
definitely
purpose.
say
Yeah.
that it
Well, it
is
wasn't our goal to identify all the plants. That's all. Thank you. That's
it
it.
is the folks like you guys that approach the folks at the agencies that make these things happen. So you guys approached Katie, our boss, years ago and said, "Hey, we want this to happen," and it happened. It things only happen because people make it happen. So we're just there to facilitate what you guys want.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, just, you know, my favorite part about being some small part of this is watching from a very, very, very far away outlook on just how things grow and seeing that there's this enormous growth in observation is really pretty incredible. Um, and it seems like people are really, really excited about it. Um, let me see. Great. Carla asked, totally off topic, but has it been mentioned that the pollinator license plates are now available? I have mine ordered. Any last questions before we let people go? Go ahead and drop them in the chat. All right. Any last announcements or anything that the board wants to share before we call it a night?
Tomorrow begins the 4-day iNaturalist sponsored by many people City Nature Challenge. So just remember to take pictures tomorrow, the next day, the next day, and the next day. And that's the observation part, and then the identification part is April 28th through May 10th. It's extended to 2 weeks this year. So, and all you got to do is have iNaturalist. You don't have to like join any project. If you're in a geographical area, it'll add you to it. So, just enjoy.
Super. Y'all have a wonderful evening. Thank you again for everyone who joined us, and massive congratulations to all the hard work and all the volunteers who've done incredible things over the past few years. really, really incredible stuff. So, great. And both Karen and Caleb said, please don't hesitate to email either of them with information or with questions if you have any more. Great. Have a wonderful evening, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.